Studios. This is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
All right, 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. A lot of who we are starts when we're really little, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of out of our hands because we're so little. We're always being influenced by those people who are the adults, usually parents and teachers, etc., right? Mm-hmm. And it is interesting how in different cultures, kindness is emphasized differently, right?
Yes.
And even between the two sexes, I think kindness is emphasized differently. Maybe that's something we need to look at a little closer. Let's find out about this. I have a book here. It's called The Kindness Advantage. It is written by our guest, Dr. Dale V. Atkins, and by Amanda R. Salzhauer. Both of them are on the phone right now. Dr. Atkins is a licensed psychologist who focuses on families, wellness, managing stress, living a balanced life. And Amanda Salzhauer is a social worker in clinics and private practice, a board member of several leading nonprofit organizations. Again, the book is called The Kindness Advantage, Cultivating Compassionate and Connected Children, Everyday Ideas for Raising Kids Who Care. This is what we want. If you're just at the beginning of raising children, you want to pay attention to this, right?
Yeah.
Dr. Atkins and Amanda, good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
To you. Thank you for having us as your guest.
Oh, absolutely. Are you both in the same place?
One of us is in Connecticut. That would be me. I'm Dale. And Amanda's in New York.
Okay. Well, thank you both for being on the air with us today. So do we do things differently today than we did 100 years ago that we need to address? Are we better at raising kind children, kind human beings?
I don't know if we're better. I think what we might have done 100 years ago, although I wasn't there to witness it, is that we had a lot of people around who were role models for both good and bad, but we had a lot more people around, and we had different kinds of stresses. And I think that now, when we're focusing on kindness, what we're trying to do is understand that we are hardwired for kindness, and we really want to nurture what's in our children. And sometimes we become so busy and so distracted and so engaged with other things that we think have such incredible meaning that we don't pay attention to the kindness that is actually in us, and we don't nurture it and develop it in our children and grandchildren. And so that's really what we'd like to do. We'd like to really focus on how we can help parents and grandparents nurture that's what was already in us.
Yeah. Does a child who learns kindness not become a bully?
This is a demonstration of there is actually research on kids 9 to 11 years old who regularly engage in acts of kindness. And what these researchers found is that these kids tend to do better in terms of their academic performance. They feel better about themselves. They're more inclusive, and as you suggested, they are less likely to bully others as they get older. So kindness is vital.
And have you found that the monetary differences between children and adults have an effect?
Actually, the research in that area shows that it doesn't matter whether or not a child is in a wealthier family or a poorer family, but there is research to support that kids who are in poorer communities are generally that those parents may not give as much money, but are giving more time and effort within their communities to make a difference. But this goes across all socioeconomic groups and all races that we have research for, that kindness, we are all born with the ability to be kind, and we just need to nurture it. So I think what we're really learning is that the importance of community helps us to be kind when we recognize and notice who among us needs help and where can we make a difference. that's what we want to nurture around.
It's using kindness as a starting point. I mean, it seems like the best way to raise children. I think it would prevent bullying. I think it would prevent prejudices, and I think it would prevent not jealousy, maybe, but greediness. I think it seems like a great foundation for a lot of things that we as human beings get wrong, as far as preventing those things.
Absolutely. And, I want to go back to your first question, Larry, about, kind of what's changed in the last 100 years. And one of the things that has changed, not necessarily in what we're doing, but is the research that we have now about how kindness and, so many other things impact us. So, there's no question that, there was another study that was done with parents of preschoolers. And, and what they saw is that the parents noticed their achievements, the kids' achievements, and commented on those, but were less likely to notice their acts of kindness. So it's really, really important, and we want parents and grandparents to kind of take this home with them, that act of noticing and remarking on the acts of kindness that you see your little ones doing is very, very important. So if you see, if you see a child fill up the dog's water bowl, especially without being asked, say thank you. You really take such good care of your dog. That's such a kind thing for you to do. If they notice that somebody, dropped a sweatshirt on the playground, and they call to them and say, "Hey, I think you dropped something," compliment them, acknowledge that was a kind thing for them to do to another person. So there are lots of ways for us to notice and acknowledge the kindness that our kids, our little kids especially, are exhibiting, because as you said, that kindness is such an important foundation for so many other qualities that we want to help our children develop.
And you have different stories in your book that reflect that. They're very touching.
We were very encouraged by social media and helping to discover some of these stories. I mean, in each part of the chapter about the fundamentals, the 10 fundamentals of kindness that we talk about, we focus on one, and then for each one we have a couple of real-life stories. And these are real-life stories from real-life children who saw something in the world that they wanted to change or have an impact about. And, like a little girl who was 8, whose name was Maria, and she loved to read. And she couldn't believe that every kid didn't have books, so she decided that through her church she was going to collect books, and people helped. And she said, "I want to collect 1 million books by my 18th birthday." She was 8 years old.
Wow.
And she set up a company, a group called Read Indeed, and at 13 years old she collected 1 million books. So now her new goal for her 18th birthday was to distribute books to every kid in every state in every country in the world. I mean, it's incredible to us. There was a 6-year-old whose dad helped to train canines, the dog team, even though he was a detective, but he sometimes would help train the dogs, and she would take pictures of him. She was 6 years old, and when she was putting together an album, she noticed that not all the dogs had protective bulletproof vests, and she wondered why, and she was told that it's because each vest cost $600. So she decided to sell her toys and her stuffed animals and her bikes, and she has now donated dog vests in 4 states. And these are kids who were...
She must have had a lot of toys. That little girl had a lot of toys.
Oh, bicycles, too,
Wow, that's...
And it's funny. She was quoted to say, and I sold 3 bicycles. What happens is, obviously, when kids do this, people in their community want to support them. And other families want to support them. And each act of kindness begets another act of kindness because
that's a wonderful
want to
thing.
become a part.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing. A long time ago, we were interviewing Tony Robbins, the guy, the motivational speaker, and he was telling us, I guess his son is grown now, but he told us that his son gets an allowance or earns some money or something, and he said, well, let's give some of it away. And they bought either some balloons or flowers, I can't remember what it was, and they brought it to a nursing home or something of that sort. In other words, doing something, in other words, intentionally having an exercise of generosity to, I guess, build his character.
Yes, I love that story, and I think that is such an important thing for parents to do. And what I would imagine what his son realized in doing something like that was, wow, you know what? It makes me feel really good to be kind to somebody else, to do something nice for someone else, in addition to making the person that I am bringing these balloons or flowers to feel good. You know, and so we actually have a whole chapter in the book about finding, formal or volunteer experiences, because that is such an important experience for kids. And one of the things that, and obviously this is going to vary based on your child's age, but one of the things that's so important is to get your child involved with you when you're thinking about doing an activity. So if your child comes home from school really excited about, the nature center field trip, you might want to sit and say to them, hey, I see that you really loved going to see all of these animals. Might you want to think about doing something like going to the shelter in town and petting the cats, brushing the cats, walking the dogs, something like that. So you want to both get your child involved and engaged in planning those more formal activities, as well as building on interests and passions that they might express to you. Because those, doing those two things will help them feel more invested and engaged in those activities.
And that's what is so wonderful about our community with our Marion County public school system, is that when the students, they get into the junior high and high school level, they have different clubs and organizations that they do volunteer work, and then they can log those hours and apply that toward their scholarship applications.
That's really great. There really is wonderful opportunity for children to engage in what's also called service learning, and they engage with doing something within the community, and then they talk about it. They talk about what it means to them, the effect it has on them, and the effect it has on others. They talk about what they learned about it. And another thing is to volunteer also with your children, particularly older children. You can go and you can take a volunteer trip. You can, if you're on a trip, you can do something for a community that you visit. You can find out before you go what might be needed. There's an organization called Pack with a Purpose. Maybe you can bring books to a particular community and visit. There's so many ways to do things as a family as well. And what's interesting is that the studies that have been done on families that volunteer together notice that kids really see their parents in a very different light, and parents see their kids in a very different light, because usually they're off their smartphones and they are engaging with real-life people, and they respect and admire each other from a very different perspective. And it gives you an opportunity to get out of your normal life and do something together that's meaningful.
Nice. The book has one of the subtitles, Everyday Ideas for Raising Kids Who Care. And I was just wondering, as a psychologist, can the exercises, let's say, be therapeutic for, let's say you're observing, oh gosh, my son is a little bit of a bully, or my son is a little bit condescending to his friend, would this be the antidote for that, to kind of nip it in the bud, to get that boy or girl to say, hey, come on, let's go cook some food for somebody who needs food, or something like that?
Yes, and yes. To try and view kindness as an antidote for bullying, for meanness, for a lack of connectedness, is really a wonderful lens through which to look at what we're trying to accomplish. And I really appreciate that you framed it in that way, because there are reasons why people feel disconnected. There are reasons why people are sometimes hesitant to reach out or to connect with others. And often it's fear. Often it's, really focusing on their own selves. It's interesting because there's some studies done with older kids, college students actually, who appear to be less empathic than previous generation. And some of the ideas about that have to do with, are they just too focused on themselves in their own world of their smartphones and things like that. And one of the things that is often alluded to as far as helping is getting connected with real people, with real animals, with the environment, with doing something that has to do with a human being and a human connection. So yes, it is definitely an antidote. But I do forewarn with forcing someone to do something in an environment that may not be right for them, because it will backfire. So it's really important to try and find something that would speak to that particular child, and maybe a reflection of what they're talented at, what they love, so they can share their particular talent. Maybe they're good at chess and they could teach chess to somebody, or maybe they love to cook, as you said, and bring their favorite cookies to to a children's shelter. Whatever it is, it should reflect something of their interest, and then you start small. But yes, it is the antidote.
How do you help a child that is going through turmoil in their life? Sometimes children are foster children and they're, pushed around from family to family. How do you help them to be givers instead of having bitterness?
It's a great question, and I think that it can be so much harder and obviously so disruptive, for kids when they are not in a consistent home, in a consistent environment. And I think that one of the things, we actually have a chapter in the book on relaxation and mindfulness techniques, and we can all benefit from those kinds of techniques. But I think particularly when kids are in situations that are difficult and when they feel anxious, these are things, simple breathing activities, breathing exercises, progressive muscle relaxation. So, for example, when you're in bed at night, before you go to sleep, to do some of these activities. If you are a family that's fostering kids, that's a great kind of habit, routine to get into with a child, because it's both something that they can do when they're with you, something you can do when you're together, but it's also something that if the child leaves your home and goes to a different home, it's something that they can take with them, that they can, sort of internalize as a way to help them try to, feel calm, feel relaxed, be conscious of what's around them. And I think another tool which is so important, and that a lot of us often lose sight of, is gratitude. And even though we may be in a very, very difficult environment, to just take a minute to think about one or two, or if there are three things that you're grateful for in your life. And if you do that a couple of days a week with a child, and do it yourself, that can have a huge impact to help us stay focused on where the meaning comes from in our life, rather than being swept up with some of the bitterness, as you said, Robin, and the negativity.
The book is called The Kindness Advantage, and I want to tell you a quick story from this morning's news. It was a human interest story. It was about a girl, and I don't think she was a child girl. I think she might have been a teenager. I'm not sure. But anyway, she and her mother are stuffing stockings to bring to the homeless with like a Christmas theme of giving and being kind. And so I think their goal is 1,000. Was it 1,000 stockings?
Yeah, 200.
Oh, 200. Okay.
Stockings.
So 200 stockings is their goal. And what I thought about that story was that other people who hear that story or read that story will do something similar or the same. So can you ladies give us some of the ideas maybe from the book of things we could maybe do? Because I think this is a great exercise even for adults.
Absolutely. And just what you said, so someone will say, gee, I'd like to, stuff stockings for people in a homeless shelter, and someone else will do that. Well, someone else may say, well, gee, I'm really good at knitting. I'm gonna get a group of people together, and we're gonna knit winter caps. I know you're in Florida, but wherever they are, and or baby booties or something or blankets, and let's do that. Let's do what I do, and then give it to a local hospital or give it to a shelter, or pack something for service people overseas. This is Veterans Day. What might veterans need here, and what might people who are serving overseas need? And I think that doing this, or when you're shopping and you're with your child, a lot of supermarkets have little carts for kids, and you can give your kid 2 things to look for.
Oh, nice.
Maybe it's dog food,
nice.
And you then drop it at the shelter. So there are lots of things that you can do.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
And just each time notice where there's something to be done and do it. And ask your child, what can we do to make a difference here? If your kid likes to draw, maybe the next time you go to the art supply place, you get an extra set of papers and Sharpies, and you take them to the local library, which often local libraries have places where they have kids also draw, and kids who don't have these things on their own. When you buy a book, get an extra book and donate it to the library, or give it to a school that may not have enough books. So there's always things that you can do. And also, when your kids are cleaning out their closets with you, you can look at the things that really still look good, or maybe just need an extra coat of paint, and then donate those things, because someone else will really appreciate it.
And your book must have manifested itself from your own personal journeys, because you both are related to each other, and you both had wonderful experiences growing up.
That is true. So we are a niece and aunt team. I am the niece. Dale is my aunt. And we were really blessed to grow up in a family, for both of us to grow up in a family where kindness was tremendously valued. And we were really surrounded by kindness role models. My grandfather, Dale's father, was just sort of a larger-than-life personality, and knew so many people in the community, remembered details about people's families, and would greet them and ask about a relative who had been ill, or a recent achievement, and share something like that. He was incredibly active in all kinds of civic organizations, a Rotary Club, the local Boy Scouts, and gave back in so many different ways, both large and through organizations, and in those small everyday encounters. And he was somebody who...
This is a demonstration of Wirecast. 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 This is a demonstration of Wirecast.